they're getting ready to sit down, we have Phil from Mundo Media and Jonathan from Touch of Modern. Appreciate you guys both being here. Maybe let's start off, just tell us a little about yourselves, the company you work for, and what your role is.
I'm Phil Jones. I'm the Chief Financial Officer at Mundo Media Limited. Mundo Media is a performance-based ad network. Basically, imagine an advertising agency that you only had to pay if they actually brought you a paying customer. That's essentially what we do with performance-based. All of our work is done online. Majority of our business now is done really through app development. So a gaming company will come to us and say, I want to acquire new users. We run the online campaign, and for every new user we send to that customer, they pay us a set fee or bounty. At the same time, we work with a very large supplier base that sends us traffic into our system that helps optimize and find these customers. We pay them on the same performance-based metric, which is sort of why we ended up moving to Tipalti years ago.
I'm Jonathan Wu. I'm one of the co-founders and formerly the Chief Operating Officer at Touch of Modern. Touch of Modern is a men's retailer. We sell everything from furniture, apparel, watches, electronics, accessories, pretty much a broad spectrum of products. The general idea was that men like to shop, but they get bored very easily shopping. So how do you keep their attention span in the kind of new age? And so our model and method was every day our product catalog changes. We add and change about 200 different products per day, working with vendors from around the world. And we operate on kind of a just-in-time inventory consignment model. So actually everything we're selling is more or less pre-sold, so we actually never know what we're selling or how much we're selling. So it really adds a lot of complexity to how we're buying and selling our goods.
Great. Maybe let's shift to the business model itself. How do each of your companies monetize?
I say with Mundo, it's performance-based. So our advertisers, basically our customers, we call them advertisers. For every action, they define a sort of a KPI or criteria. For example, we used to work with Lyft, or we still do with Lyft and Uber. And so their criteria was somebody would download our app and actually take a first ride. Or some of the other gaming companies, that someone downloads the app, they play the game, they reach level 4, they spend some money buying an extra life or a bigger army or that sort of thing. It was a way that they could distinguish what a real user was from a fake user or something coming from a bot or a click farm. And so everything is performance-based. We meet the criteria. They pay us, as I said, a set fee for every criteria. And we essentially broker that out to a network of 40,000 publishing partners throughout the world, and who drive traffic into our system. Our ad platform then helps to best monetize and match up which traffic source will buy which product, driving conversion rates that hopefully are greater than our competitors, so that our customers will keep working with us and our publishing partners will send us more and more traffic as the ROI on that traffic, hopefully superior working with us than the guy next door.
Right. Great.
We are more, I wouldn't say we're a traditional retailer, but we're a retailer in the sense that all of our revenue comes from our direct customers. The thing that we're a little different on is the sense that we run an inventory-less model. So we never pre-purchase our inventory. Everything is operated really on a pre-sale model or a consignment model. So we work with our vendors and negotiate a quantity of how much they're going to allocate to us and at what price we're going to buy it. And then we'll feature the items on our site every day and essentially pre-sell the items. Once we know how many units we've actually sold to our customers, then we'll place that order and then we'll ship it out to our customers. So it really minimizes the inventory risk, but adds a little complexity because we're not doing the traditional purchase order and kind of very predictable amount of units for both our warehousing and for our ordering. Everything is very much on the fly. And then over the years, actually using Tipalti's technology, we've changed that model a bit in the sense now we do a variation of the consignment model where actually most of our vendors will ship us our goods and we'll hold it in our warehouses. Then as we pre-sell it every day, every week, every month, then we'll actually start paying the goods on demand and then shipping it out on demand to our customers. So therefore, we really cut that delay in shipping time, whereas in the traditional flash sale models, you used to see companies have 2 weeks to a month lead time to get a product delivered, now we can do it in a few days because we're actually holding all those goods without taking in any of that inventory.
Great. Let's talk about, kind of your partner program and how imperative it is to growth. So maybe, Philip, talk about, how publishers play such a critical role into your business model.
Sure. In the performance ad tech space, it's a bit of a chicken and egg scenario. You need to sign up your customers or advertisers to have the hottest offers on the internet, but they won't work with you if you don't have a publisher base that can deliver volume. Same time, your publishers won't work with you if you don't have the best and latest offers. But at the end of the day, it really comes down to the publisher base. There's very little loyalty, we'll call it, within the ad tech space. Your publishers are going to work with everybody. And the key differentiator is always pay your publishers, whether or not you get paid by the advertiser. Pay them faster than your competitors will, and make sure you pay them the right amount. And so as our company began to grow, the key was all about keeping the publishers happy. And in the ad tech space, speed is also really important with the publishers. They get paid weekly. So a server runs traffic from Monday to Sunday. We have to have money in their bank account by Wednesday. Money's not there on Wednesday, that traffic starts to go to your competitors. And so it was very important for us to have a solution that could guarantee that. Otherwise, the business just falls apart.
Perfect. Wow.
For us as a retailer, the most important thing is having unique merchandise. And so for us, we decided to source internationally from the very beginning. Because at the time, we started about 5-6 years ago, most retailers, especially those operating in the daily sales or daily sales type of environments, were sourcing domestically because it made all your logistics a lot simpler. So we decided to work internationally, source internationally from the very beginning, because that gave us access to the newest merchandise, which meant our customers were most excited to visit our site. The complexity about that, of course, is not only are you shipping and importing goods, but you're also working and paying vendors internationally. And then from there, in a lot of cases, most of these vendors are actually small mom and pop shops, a lot of one-man vendors that have really just come up with a great idea for a product and are now just trying to get distribution and sell it. So for us, a very important aspect of it was trying to make it as easy as possible for our vendors to work with us, because in the world of physical goods, especially in smaller vendors, they're only going to work with so many partners because it's a major headache for them to actually work with different relationships and ship them across the world. So they're very kind of selective, especially the smaller ones, with the retailers that they're working with. So to make it easy, we wanted to make it as simple as them to work with us, meaning in terms of getting paid, being completely flexible in all the terms, meaning from how they got paid, by what currency, by what payment method, by what time frame they got paid. Everything was flexible and based on whatever they wanted and preferred. And so when we started, we were trying to look for something that could really give us that flexibility. Initially, it was all done manually, which means you have the ultimate flexibility. But very soon, since we only had one person, myself, in finance, it became very unmanageable. So we started looking for a software solution that could automate the entire process. And that's where we found Palti.
Let's talk about your payment operations. In the beginning days, what were some of the challenges you both faced?
With us, it was a combination of meeting the needs of the suppliers as well as speed. I first met Tapalti back in 2011, and at that point we were doing $40-50 million a year in revenue. We're now $150 million, and I had probably 40-50 publishers I had to pay out every Wednesday. That's now into the hundreds that have to get paid out, but I wasn't allowed to add headcount. The founders of our company viewed anything administrative that didn't drive revenue as a necessary evil, and therefore the cost should be kept as low as possible. So it was, how do you come up with a solution? Because we could have scaled if I could just keep adding bodies and whatnot. And our initial process was everybody in our industry was getting paid by wire. So we had these wire templates set up at our bank, and every week we would figure out, okay, who's the 50 or 80 people that ran traffic and get paid this week, and manually going through your banking system and go, yeah, I'll take that wire and that one. And it would take an entire day or more. Clearly not scalable. At the same time, our publisher base is very global. I've got publishers in 180 countries. And while the US dollar is the universal currency in our industry and all billing and pricing is done in US dollars, the publisher, depending on what country they're in, might not be able to receive a wire in US dollars. So they were saying, okay, well, can you pay me by a wire? Can you pay me by an e-check, something, other solution, different currency? And that's when sort of Tipalti came to us. I met them at a trade show, and most of the competitors at the time were offering a solution, which was a prepaid credit card, which didn't solve the problem I had. My suppliers weren't individuals, they were corporations. They didn't want the AP clerk running around with a prepaid credit card with 200 grand on it. And so Tipalti says, well, I can pay any country, any currency, check, e-check, ACH, wire, you name it, and it's all self-serve to the publisher. So the publisher goes in, they register in our system, it's an iframe, they can't tell that they're actually in a separate system for the payments. All the information there, my team, doesn't matter. Every week we just run a CSV file of who we're paying that week, upload it to Tipalti, done. Nothing else to do, no picking out the wires. And then the other challenge we had is before Tipalti, every Wednesday morning, we would start to get flooded with phone calls from our suppliers. Did my wire go out? Did my wire go? Did you pay me? And we're like, yes, we did. Oh, can you send me a screenshot of the confirmation because I don't believe you? And again, very time consuming. So one of the pitch came from Tipalti is you're going to have a dashboard that when they log into our registration portal, and there'll be it's an iframe link into a dashboard. They can see the payments, they can get a copy of the wire confirmation, they can see the reference numbers, and they can see every wire I've ever sent them. Because that was the other challenge we get at the end of every year for tax purposes. They'd all call you up going, yeah, can you tell me how much money you paid me last year? And send everything I got to get it over to my bookkeeper. And so there was all these things that were a burden on my team, no longer had to deal with. And so that's what's allowed us to grow and actually reduce the headcount in the finance function at the same time.
Awesome. Hey, Jonathan.
Yeah, so for our operations, as I mentioned, as a daily sales model, every day we're working with new vendors, which means we never, in a lot of cases, in the beginning, we're never working with the same vendors. So every day you're setting up brand new accounts to pay and figuring out what to pay them because it's never a consistent amount. When we were starting, of course, we had no employees or no people. So everything was done manually, and no one had access to the bank account but myself, which meant I was setting up everything and paying everything. So, every single day, a couple hours a day, you're going in, you're trying to collect all the bank account information, and then as you're starting a business, you have no idea how to pay people internationally, you have no idea what information you need to collect in order to actually send that payment. So in some cases, it'd have some back and forth to collect information to actually send that payment. So we decided very early on that was a complete waste of time, especially my time. And so we took a philosophy where the idea was, can we use technology as much as possible to operate all of our operational tasks? So our operations and technology team, or actually really two people, worked very closely together to try and make sure we minimized our headcount within all of our operational tasks. So we looked around for a solution that actually could automate payments, again, by any method and by any currency. And we stumbled across Tipalti. Initially at the time, they were mainly built for the advertising space, solving a very specific problem there. But then we had this idea, it's like, all right, it's kind of the same premise, but in the sense that we're trying to pay out a lot of different vendors. But rather than paying it on a general cadence, what if we just pay them sporadically at more or less any time, and we're always constantly onboarding and offboarding vendors? And so using their same self-service platform, a lot of the same things worked very well, in the sense that we could get our vendors to enter all their bank account information, and then in case, so normally actually when we're doing things manually, we also had the issue where sometimes the wire would actually not make it because there's a typo. So when the vendor enters their information, if there is a typo, then they actually admit their own fault and they understand and they don't blame you for having that typo, which is a very big plus. But we had vendors on board, enter the information, and then our system could then automate the payment based on how much we owe them, based on how much we pre-sold each of their items. So it really simplified how we were doing business because we never had to build out a finance organization, and particularly for me, we never had to give any individual in the organization access to any of the financial accounts. So while we scaled up and grew over the company from the very beginning all the way up, only one person, for better or for worse, had access to all the financial accounts, which meant there was very little risk of money going out the wrong way. And that was kind of how we grew. All of our payments went out automatically. All of our vendors never had to worry because they were the ones in control of getting paid. And then they uploaded their own invoices, and all the payments went out on the timing that they had set.
Great, thank you. So it's clear that partners in both of your businesses are critical for growth and sustainable growth for the future. And you mentioned onboarding, so maybe dive a little bit deeper there. Like, let's talk about the onboarding process of a vendor in your case. Before and after, and how compliance and risk and other things were part of that experience that you need to solve for.
Yeah, so in the very beginning, onboarding was not really onboarding at all. We'd receive the invoice with their bank account information. They said, just pay us. And so we have to go through the whole process, figuring out, log into our bank, in that case Silicon Valley Bank, enter the bank account information. If we're missing information, we have to email them back and forth to get it. Set up the payment and fire it, and hopefully it makes it. 90% of the time it made it, and then 10% of the time it got lost, had to bounce back, and we had to try all over again, which was obviously a big headache. Once we moved to Tipalti after a couple months of starting the company, everything became much more self-service, in the sense that when vendors actually started working with us, they got an email notifying them that this is the platform that we use to pay our vendors. And by platform, it's a white label platform. So they just log into our portal located at the Touch of Modern website. So they feel everything is still embedded within the entire ecosystem. They'll enter their information, their bank account information, and also their tax information, which we had no idea we needed to collect since we were starting brand new. And then all of that is saved for any time we need to pay them. That way, we never have to get their bank information whenever we're actually going to pay them. We get it right up front when we start the relationship. And then also, Tipalti's platform that we also didn't know we need to do, because we're working internationally, it will verify all the bank accounts against any anti-money laundering laws and any blacklisted accounts or countries to make sure you're fully compliant there, which was very valuable once we actually began auditing, and our auditors were very happy that we actually had that taken care of without even knowing it. So once the vendors log on, they can enter all their information, and then once we actually do a business transaction and we've bought goods from them, they upload an invoice directly into the system. The system will calculate everything, and then we have our system match the invoice against the purchase order and the goods received in our warehouse to make sure everything lines up properly. And then presuming everything lines up properly, our system will automatically approve that invoice and then fire off the payments at the appropriate time based on what we've calculated the payment terms will be.
With ours, it's sort of I guess the initial challenge is when we started working with Tipalti, we were already a decent sized company with a lot of volume. And so the challenge I put to the Tipalti team was, okay, how do I switch over from what I'm doing today to your system without it becoming a sort of a nightmare process on my side? So what we were able to do was work with our existing bank to get a download of all those hundreds and hundreds of wire templates we had, which we were lucky, we were smart enough when we labeled them all, we used the publisher's ID number as the start of the name in the wire template. So we uploaded everything to Tipalti, and they created, again, it's an iframed within our existing publisher system. They uploaded and created all the profiles for all the publishers and pre-populated all the wire information. We then triggered or set the accounts to hold, put an announcement out to all of our publishers that effective, I think it was October 1, 2012, this is the new solution that you're getting. You can now have all this extra flexibility in terms of currency and payments and et cetera, et cetera. What we need you to do is go into the system, verify the information is correct, and remove the hold. And that way, we had them self-checking that the upload had actually worked correctly in terms of transferring one system to the other. And then after that, it was smooth sailing. And now as new publishers sign up, The internet space is, I'm sure you've all heard stories, is full of fraud. Lots of people pretending to do things they do or who they are. So in our space, we have a very strict compliance process in how a new publisher comes on board. It's fairly unique, to at least within our industry, that we don't allow random publishers to sign up. They have to actually go through a screening and interview process, a reference process, and part of that is uploading all their banking information. One of the things that the Tipalti system then will do is it'll look at all of that information from name, address, contact, phone, email, banking, and cross-reference it against any other publisher who's already in our database. And this help us link up accounts of people who are clearly working together, because the fear is, well, one guy might be sending good traffic, but the other guy is sending lousy stuff, and you can sort of cross-hold payments. At the same time, we get publishers that we routinely remove or expel from our network, whether it be for low quality, fraud, something else. This catches them when they try to come back in under a different name, because there's usually some piece of information that crosses over. Even if we've kicked them off the network, the data is all still there. And so we'll get these alerts. You get a few a week come in from the Tipalti compliance system going, there's a match. In some cases, it's a match that's fine, false positive. But in many cases, it has actually prevented people who committed fraud on our system from actually getting on board as well. And then the other side is there's sharing information that happens through Tipalti with each of the vendors. So we'll get alerts that'll say, hey, you've got these 5 vendors working for you who were flagged for fraud on one of our other customers. It's a no-name basis, but then right away we can go in and look, okay, well, they're doing the same thing on our side. How's the quality of the traffic? We're running into any issues? So again, very, very proactive, and something that's unique to us, especially in the ad tech space now. Fraud and traffic quality are probably the most serious issue that they have ever been in the sort of life of ad tech. And then again, as Jonathan pointed out, with anti-money laundering regulations and things of that nature, we have a lot of publishers who like to live in one country, bank in another country, and things like that for, we'll call it tax planning. But it helps guard against any of that we don't want to become involved in.
Right. Yeah. So Jonathan, Philip mentioned fraud, risk mitigation. From a value-add experience for your vendors, what else does, going beyond payments, what else does automating payables bring to your organization?
I think for us, the biggest thing was for our vendors bringing a level of trust and security, because we were working internationally and working with a lot of vendors who have a bit of trust issues, especially when they're very small. Normally, in most places, they prefer just be paid by credit card. They get paid in advance. That way, they always get paid before they ship their goods. In order to develop that level of trust where they'll actually send you products or merchandise or services before you pay them, then they need to have that assurance and trust that they will actually get paid. So being able to onboard them right when we're starting that conversation, one, establishes our credibility that we are actually a real company. We're collecting this information for a reason. It's part of our standard process. And then because they're in control of the process where they upload their invoices, they can always see their dashboard on when the payment is getting initialized, when it's getting sent, a list of all their transactions. They have all those records. It means they feel very confident in that relationship and that they're always getting paid. And that's given us that flexibility and ability to change our business and evolve it, as I said, to begin to start consigning all of our inventory. So I think about a third to half our inventory now is consigned from vendors from across the world, because we work with our vendor, as we operate a daily sales model, we work with our vendors maybe a few times a year. That way our merchandise is always fairly fresh on the site. But it's a little bit of a hassle for them to constantly ship the goods and deal with different purchase orders. So by just having them ship all the goods to our warehouse and we just hold it, it just makes it so they don't have to worry about anything. And it's allowed us to change our business. So for different customers, we can actually show them different merchandise and scatter it. That way we can constantly sell merchandise without it looking stale to any individual customer. And then we can constantly buy it on any cadence that we want. And we don't have to think about anything. So as we've changed our business, both our customers, actually, and even our employees never notice the difference in how we're selling our merchandise, how often or how frequent we're cutting purchase orders, because everything is done automatically through the system. So in the beginning, we used to send maybe a couple of thousand payments a year. And last year I checked, we sent over 20,000 payments, and no one noticed a difference, right? Because everything is completely automated. We're able to change the business and send more payments and work with more vendors without anyone noticing.
Great. So now that you guys have modernized this process, let's talk about a little bit around, the return on investment, or how now you've had more time. What have you been able to do with that to put it back into your finance organizations?
In terms of time, I no longer have to worry about the detailed payments process. All kidding aside, that's really what it is. As I say, our company's tripled in size, but I actually have fewer people today working on the payment side of my business than I had 6 years ago. A lot of that's, again, Tipalti's been the biggest impact for that, and then once we got down this path of trying to automate things, then it sort of created a culture. We started to look at other parts within our accounting function. Okay, well, how can I remove a person from a keyboard or get data in that place? But yeah, a big part of it is I now spend a lot more of my time on M&A and dealing with investors and shareholders and banking partners than I have to worry about the compliance side. The team that sits under me deals with all of that and without issue.
Great. What about you, Jonathan?
For us, it was actually a few things. So the biggest one is, we work with Tipalti basically when we started. And so for us, one of the big aspects was we never built out our finance organization. I oversaw finance for the past 5 or 6 years while I was part of the company. So from scaling from the beginning at 0 revenue all the way over 100 million in sales, we never built out our finance org. I pretty much ran all of the finance, including payroll and closing the books. And then when I left last year, we did hire a controller to take over that. But then as a result of that as well, another aspect is because we never built out an AP team or any other teams within finance, you also don't have the organizational headache or management headache with managing multiple people or an additional team, which means it's just one less thing to think about because, as I found in most organizations, the biggest headache and stress is actually on the people side. So the less people you can have, the simpler your life will overall become. And also not having to worry about any typos, errors, or just human error, right? Because our system was handling all the payments and cross-checking everything itself, it was able to pretty much handle all the payments. And anything that didn't match up quite perfectly, we'd get pushed an email and double check it. But that would take a couple minutes a day.
Great. So for those here in the audience who are evaluating their payables transformation, what advice would you give them? Lessons learned, key takeaways, like why you should make this a priority now versus waiting?
I think for our side, it was efficiency. It was taking a process, Jonathan pointed out, that has the ability to potentially create a lot of headaches for you, whether it be typos, people, whatever, and removing that. In our case, it also made sort of empowered, I guess, our publisher. It made them happier that they could choose to get paid different ways, different currencies. Mm-hmm. They put in their own wire information, so if there's a typo, it's on them, not on us. And so a lot of it was just removing, that pain point. Right. And with our case, it also allows for growth without worrying about what growth's going to mean to headcount or workloads. Whether I'm doing 50 payments a week or 300, it's minuscule the time difference. Right. And so it allows to scale for the growth. And then we looked at other solutions. And even while we've been at Tipalti, we've always the competitors come knocking, and they always do to try to win the business away. But at the end of the day, it was always they weren't offering anything. In some cases, they didn't even have they couldn't solve the problems that Tipalti already was. So right. Why would I ever look to switch? Cool.
From our mentality, the biggest thing is thinking about operations and finance as a place where you can invest and go in with the mentality of kind of almost like set it and forget it. So if you do all your work up front investing, particularly with technology and the integration aspect, then once everything is set and smooth, you never have to think about it again. So how we think of a lot of our partners, especially our technology partners, is if you never have to use their customer service, it's normally a pretty good thing. And so for the most part, the only reason why we have to touch base with Tipalti's customer service is when one of our vendors enters the wrong bank account information and it gets bounced and they have to make sure everything is set up properly, or make sure that the money will get bounced back and push out again. But other than that, we've been able to scale and grow without having to ever think about it, because we made that investment early on. Our CTO did the integration. It was fairly quick, about a month, and then everything was smooth sailing from there. So it's kind of worth it to not have to think about that part of the business ever again. So then you just go moving down the organization on other aspects of the business that you can start to automate and never have to think about. It makes your life simple.